Are you using these simple tips when creating webinar surveys? Webinars are a great business tool for a multitude of reasons. They offer valuable content to top and mid-funnel leads, and they offer an easy introduction to your brand for newcomers. While webinars are engaging on their own, you can make them even more effective with the addition of surveys. Surveys can increase engagement, improve the quality of your webinars, and provide your participants with a clear idea of what to expect. I'm Noel, and in today's video, we'll discuss some webinar survey best practices, along with 14 essential webinar survey questions worth including. Let's go. Before we get into our list of essential webinar survey questions, let's spend a little time discussing question crafting best practices. You want your questions to be clear and concise, and to get to the center of what you want to know. Consider these 4 tips. When you create questions that are logical, short, and straightforward, you'll encourage brief and honest answers. Try to steer clear of any leading questions and make sure to only ask what you need to know. Cutting back on the fluff makes questions easier to understand and, therefore, easier to answer. Another great tip is to aim for quality over quantity when it comes to your inquiries. Figure out what the goal of your survey is, and then only ask questions that contribute directly to gathering those valuable insights. You may distribute a survey where knowing the exact age or state of residence of a participant is important to your analysis. However, if that kind of info doesn't directly support your goal, leave it out. Skip unnecessary and tedious questions and save time for you and your respondents. You should also keep your survey layout top of mind if you want to create the best survey possible. The layout, typefaces, colors, branding, and logo all affect your survey's success. If you're using rating scale answers, try putting the most negative response at 1 and the most favorable at 10. If you're grouping questions together, you can start broad and then drill down into specifics. With these layout tips, you'll notice an uptick in participant response rates. The final best practice in creating great webinar survey questions is simple but important. Make your survey easy to respond to. You'll want your questions to be as simple as possible and provide clear instructions on how to answer each question. One simple way to make post-webinar surveys as easy to access as possible is to have them pop up in the same browser or application at the webinar itself. That way, your participants are immediately prompted to share post-webinar thoughts. You can also deploy a casual pre-webinar survey while participants are hanging out in your online waiting room. If you're ready to implement all of these webinar survey best practices, look no further than Jotform's Form Builder tool. You can design attractive surveys that are easy to use and totally customizable. You can create a look that's unique to your brand, ask one question per page with the card feature, and even ask personalized follow-up questions based on each user's unique responses. Now that you have some best practices up your sleeve, let's discuss 14 helpful questions you can ask in your webinar surveys. First, let's begin with the 7 pre-webinar questions. You can start with, where are you located and what is your role or title? Demographic-based questions can provide valuable insights about your audience. This information can even improve your marketing or help you create tailored customer experiences. What are your expectations for this webinar? This question helps you gauge what exactly your attendees are looking for, so you can mold your webinar accordingly. You'll hopefully already have your webinar planned out, but you can still gather helpful insights and infuse them into your presentation. What is your current skill level regarding the webinar topic? This question is crucial for meeting your participants where they are, as well as helping you shape your future webinars. You can also make some quick adjustments if you find that your audience is already highly skilled in the webinar topic. What type of device will you be using to participate? As a rule, you want to create a webinar that is tech-friendly. Many participants will be using tablets, laptops, TVs, and smartphones. This question helps you troubleshoot any technical requirements beforehand and preps you for future webinars as well. Do you have any experience with our events? Provide multiple choice responses for this question, and you'll be able to keep tabs on returning guests. Not all of your repeat visitors are potential buyers, so digging in with this question can help you divide where to advertise your webinar and other events. Do you have any questions that you would like addressed during the webinar? These types of feedback-based questions will boost your audience's experience. After all, who doesn't love seeing their words featured in your presentation? By adding just a few well-placed audience questions, you'll build loyalty and boost affinity for your content. Was this webinar easy to register for? If you're considering revamping your webinar process and switching webinar platforms, this question can guide your determination. With the responses gathered, you can tell if the administration and arrangement of your webinar are effective or not. Do keep in mind, however, that outcomes to this question can be skewed. Participants who have a lower level of satisfaction may leave your webinar early and therefore miss the opportunity to provide post-webinar feedback. This is why this particular question is best for a pre-webinar questionnaire. Now let's take a look at 7 helpful post-webinar survey questions. Was the event what you expected? This may be the most crucial follow-up question you could include in your post-webinar survey. This question should lead the pack as its response is an all-encompassing synopsis of the whole event. So you definitely want participants to answer it. Try asking this question as a Likert scale or multiple choice question. Doing so will make evaluating answers much more manageable. What parts of the presentation did you find most helpful? Rather than providing a simple yes or no answer response, this in-depth question will help you gain insight into specific portions of the presentation that attendees found effective. You can take those notes into consideration, highlight those portions the next time you present, and even adjust portions that didn't do so well the first time around for future presentations. Do you have any suggestions about how to improve our webinar? This type of question sends a message to your audience that it's not just about getting your message across. It's also about making sure your audience fully understands it. Make them feel heard and valued, and you'll be sure to encourage engagement and participation in future webinars as well. What was the most memorable part of the event? This particular question is more emotion-driven than the others. Tapping into participants' emotional responses to your webinar can clue you into aspects like excellent webinar hosts or especially moving elements. Responses will highlight key elements that you can use in future webinars. How user-friendly was the platform in terms of navigation? Nothing's worse than a glitchy and inconvenient webinar platform. You'll want to find out whether or not your attendees had any issues signing in, seeing the presentation, or uploading any necessary files. Take these criticisms to heart and act swiftly so future participants don't have to endure the same technical issues. What topics would you like to see us explore in the future? This question is great for gauging your audience's actual interests. Sifting through these responses will help you decide on which topics to touch on in future webinars. What overall rating would you give the event? This is an extremely important question to ask, as the answers will help you evaluate how much or how little your guests enjoyed the webinar. Try phrasing this question in a scaled way, so you can gather as accurate of responses as possible. Creating an interesting and informative webinar can be difficult. By putting in a little extra time and effort fine-tuning your webinar surveys, you'll gather the helpful feedback you need to make amazing webinars going forward. Let's review. Here are 4 webinar survey question best practices. Create logical and straightforward questions. Aim for quality of question over quantity. Be thoughtful when it comes to your survey's layout. And don't forget to make your survey as easy to respond to as possible. When it comes to your surveys, try implementing both pre- and post-webinar surveys. For your pre-webinar surveys, try asking questions like, what are your expectations for this webinar? And what type of device will you be using to participate? For post-webinar surveys, try asking, was the event what you expected? And how user-friendly was the platform in terms of navigation? Until next time, I'm Noel with Jotform. Don't forget to click subscribe, and thanks for watching.